The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And away we grow. Here we go, folks. It's that time of the week. My favorite time of the week. We're talking plants. We're talking gardening. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast. My name's Kevin Jordan. I'm your host, and I also love gardening and plants. This week, we have a gem of a guest. This is a multi-time, a repeat guest, someone that we love, admire, and we really appreciate their expertise. I'm talking about none other than Julie, the Buttercup Barbour, the garden barbarian herself, a garden warrior. How's it going there, Julie?
It's going great. Seeing the weather get warmer, seeing the plants go out the door, and everybody's really excited. This is a fabulous time of year.
And with the fluctuating, the cool, the warmth, the cool, I almost feel like we actually got a proper spring this year.
Right.
I
It
feel
wasn't.
like
It wasn't 3 days.
Yeah. We've actually got a transition. I'm loving it. We're going to talk all things gardening. We got you in studio, Austin. We've got her.
Yep, she's here.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Julie.
Oh,
Welcome
my God.
back. So
Thank
good to
you.
see you. And how have you been doing? How's your spring been?
Really good.
Yeah?
Really, really good. The weather is making me happy, and of course, all the pollen has been a little bit extra exciting this year for a lot of people.
I've been sneezing a lot.
Yep.
I don't normally do that. I'm born and bred in Sacramento, and I thought I was immune to it.
Right.
But all of a sudden this year, I went and bought allergy medicine. I don't normally do that.
Everybody thinks everybody's crying, but it's
Yeah.
just allergies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Austin was in the middle of a massive rose garden filming a video. And I look over and just tears in his eye. I'm like, he's got the passion. He loves plants. And then he blew his nose, and I was okay, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see.
It was also a beautiful
Little bit of both.
moment.
Yeah, a little bit of both. But I'm so glad we got you in here because this is a perfect time to have you. I think we're right on the edge of planting season. We've already begun, and I think there's some people, you either have your garden in, you're still working on getting your garden in, or you're maybe considering planting, but you don't want to wait too long. Actually, Austin and I were talking before we started. We have the Facebook group for the Green Acres Garden Podcast Facebook group.
Yeah.
And we had the most interesting comment from a person. They stayed anonymous. But Austin, can you share a little bit about it with us?
Yeah, so we have an anonymous poster in our Green Acres Garden Podcast group on Facebook, and they are saying, "Hey, garden friends, I hope this is okay to post here," and it definitely is.
Absolutely.
If anyone's thinking about engaging there, do it. We love that, and I would love to get more questions gathered from there and address them here, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So I'm so excited that you posted. Thank you for listening. It sounds like you've been listening for a while. And it also sounds like maybe you're a beginner and you're just kind of starting your gardening journey. And I remember what that's like.
So, Julie, what are your thoughts on somebody like that who is somewhat new to gardening, wants to get out there and do it, is really enthusiastic, but is kind of being held back, for whatever reason? What would you say to that person?
That I absolutely understand. We put a lot of hope and planning into what we put out there. Hardly anybody closes their eyes, throws seeds out there, and just hopes for the best. They've actually made a plan, and they're really looking forward to that watermelon or those cherry tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
And what we're really going to do today is cover some of those basics so that you have a little bit more confidence to give it a go. We'll review some watering. We'll review about fertilizing, the real basics that make the difference in the long run, so that even if your tomato plant looks a little sad on Tuesday, because you're watering correctly and feeding correctly, it's going to bounce back by Wednesday.
There we go. I love it. So in today's episode, I think, can we start off with a little bit of lawn talk?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I know this time of year things are warming up. The sun's staying out a little longer. It's a little more
Right.
intense. Things need to change. So what are some of the things that we should be doing in our own landscapes when it comes to our lawn and our grass?
Okay. The great thing about this time of year is that we've come off of a really nice wet spring and winter seasons, which means your soil is moist down several feet. And your lawn is going to take advantage of that. Right now, if you took a sample, you'd probably find out that some of your lawn had root zones of 6, 8, 10 inches. If you start watering and you only water an inch or two down, what have you done to that root zone that you were gifted with the warm, wet rains of spring?
I don't know. Does it kind of wilt away?
Yeah, it does, because the water table might not be there, so the plants can't find it by themselves. So we have to make up that difference. So when you start the watering season for your lawn, think longer. If you were doing 5 minutes, 6 minutes last year, let's try 7 or 8. And resist the urge to water every day. If your lawn is constantly wet at that top 1 inch, all you have are weeds, a miserable lawn, and every insect on the planet jumping at your ankles.
Sounds about right.
They're breeding in that top half inch of soggy soil.
Oh, cool.
So if you can water a few minutes longer to keep that deep root zone, and then not water again until you use your finger or a moisture meter and find out that that lawn dried out a good inch, maybe 2, before you water again, you're going to see a lawn that is a lot stronger, a lot healthier, recovers better all by itself when you're out there with the dog or you're playing catch with the kids. The other thing about the lawn is please mow the lawn so that the turf is tall. When the turf is short, the sun hits the soil. And when the sun hits the soil, you dry out the root zone, and you allow weeds to get a real head start.
We don't want that.
So people say, well, what am I supposed to do? 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches? I say make it easy. Mow the lawn. Stand out there. Look down at the ground. If you see dirt, I need you to raise the deck on the mower. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. And the taller your turf is, the deeper your root zone will be. So crew cut equals a lawn that can't recover, can't find its own water, can't find its own nutrition, and allows weeds to thrive. A nice, deep, lush, tall turf is what you're after.
So a couple inches, 2 to 3 inches tall?
2 to 3 inches tall. So if you were using your mower, you set it for 3. Let's do it.
There we go.
And a lot of people say, I hire someone to help me with this, and they just don't listen. And they keep cutting it short. And I know why they're cutting it short. They're on a schedule, and they know that they're not going to come back for another week or 10 days. So they better keep it nice and tight and low. Speak to the person who's helping you out. And if they're not willing to change their ways for you, you might need to find someone else.
Here we go.
Just like that. Yeah.
So deep and frequent watering is...
Yeah, exactly. And using your moisture measure, using your finger, find out if that soil is wet down an inch. If it is, don't let that irrigation go off.
Now, is this the time of the year to also fertilize our lawns, or is that past?
Generally, lawns are fed as a reward for having grown. So the first time you get to feed your lawn is when you need to start mowing on a weekly basis.
Oh.
That's when your lawn is hungry. So people, babies, we feed them so that they can grow. Plants are not quite that way. Plants have to show an effort. They have to show that they're actively growing for you to feed them. Otherwise, you make them grow at the wrong time.
Oh, really?
So wait for them to show you that the plant is awake, that your lawn needs to be mowed every week. That's a hungry lawn.
There we go.
Is that pretty universal for plants?
It's pretty darn universal. It sure is. Yeah.
I like the way you framed that. Thank you.
Otherwise, and that's the big difference between synthetic and organic fertilizers, too. On a very, very simplistic level, synthetic fertilizers will force a plant to grow. The plant doesn't have a choice. When you use organic fertilizers, you actually put all the food down there in the soil, and the plant knows what it needs when it needs it and takes it.
That's cool.
So if you use synthetic, that's how you get a tomato plant to grow in January. It's just going to be a really crummy tomato plant, really crummy. So feed it right so that it can find its own food.
Right on.
That's awesome. All right. Love it. When it comes to, I know a lot of people are installing a lot of beauty in their landscapes.
Right.
So beyond the edibles, but like the ornamentals, the perennials, our colorful annuals for the season. Can we discuss a little bit about the differences of how to properly plant and establish a plant right now, how to get one in the ground, get rooted, and off and running? Our temperatures right now are really nice, but I know in a few weeks or a few months, it's going to be scorching hot. So we want anything that's planted now to be well rooted in by then. So what is the best practices? How do we ensure if I'm going off the nursery and I'm buying a bunch of lavender or whatever,
Right.
I want to make sure I plant them properly and I don't bring back a bunch of dead lavender to show off.
Right. And one thing that's really great about the Green Acre site is they do have a great information sheet on how to plant. And here's some of the highlights. The first is never plant your plant into a bowl or a pool. It
Why
cannot
not?
be below grade for several important reasons. Number one, we get a lot of rain in a very short few weeks in the winter, and it's not going to soak in. It's going to sit there. You've created a drowning pool for your plants.
It's just a basin collecting,
Yep.
just sitting, not just on the roots, but on the stems and the trunk of your plants.
Exactly, because a lot of us have heard, do not change the soil line on the stem of the plant. That also is true with water. You can't have water sitting above it either. You're going to rot things out. And plant matter, leaves and all this kind of stuff falls into that planting hole as well, and it's held against the base of the plant, and that causes rot. So what you want to do is dig your hole that's twice as wide as the pot you brought home, 1 inch deeper than the pot you brought home. And then remember that when you backfill in with your plant, that soil is going to be light and fluffy. And over time, with watering, it's going to compress back
settles
down.
down.
So that's why when you plant that plant, I want you to plant it above the surrounding soil line. So 2-3 inches maybe. And then as it settles, it'll settle level with the surrounding ground. And that's going to make a big difference because plants don't stay thirsty in that basin either. As they grow and the canopy edge, the drip edge, the foliage expands out and out and out, that's where the water goes. So that basin is a very short-term fix. That will cause lots of long-term problems. So plant your plant so that it's a little bit above the ground so that it settles level, and concentrate your watering efforts on mature plants out at that furthest reach.
Yeah, you don't want to have your plants just sinking into a pit.
No.
Now, you said maybe two inches above the surrounding soil. Now, this is important.
Yeah.
Now, you do have to cover that root ball, right?
Right.
So I've seen plants planted at that height, but then they forget to
Cover
actually
the
cover
roots.
the roots, right?
Yeah, so you're going to mound it with the soil. You're going to make sure that that root zone that you brought home is protected and in soil. Remembering that you don't want to change the soil line on the plant.
We're not going to be
trunk.
packing dirt against. So one of the first things I ever did to get paid when it comes to landscaping, Austin.
Okay.
I worked at a little nursery back in the day. It doesn't even exist anymore, sadly. Beautiful little nursery called Windmill Nursery. And I watered roses all day and did my thing and was slowly learning. And then they had someone call and they said, hey, I just had some landscapers come. They planted some sequoias, a few 5-gallon redwood trees. And they're like, man, they were planted 2-3 weeks ago, and we've been watering them, and they look terrible. Can you come take a look? And they're like, hey, we're just a nursery. We sell the plants. But then they handed me that phone. They're like, hey, you can go over there and do it on your own time or whatever. Go for it. I went out there after work.
Oh, cool.
And this is when I was still learning. I'm like, I dug one up, and I realized they planted it about 2 feet up the trunk.
Oh,
So
Lord.
somebody just dug deep holes, dropped some redwood sequoia trees deep into the hole, and then planted it like you would plant a tomato plant. So
Okay.
we had our Neanderthal on here a few weeks back telling us, what's your secret to planting a good tomato plant? And he's all,
Bury it.
plant it deep.
Yep.
But all these woody lignified plants, it's the opposite. They typically
Can't do it.
aren't going to root out into that. It's like you said, they're suffocating. They can't breathe.
Right.
I popped them up, dug them up, planted them at the right depth. Now I drive past those every now and then.
Oh,
It's in
really?
Carmichael.
Hey.
And they are probably 80 feet tall.
Wow.
Beautiful
You
trees.
saved them.
Yes.
Excellent work. I'm glad they called, and I'm glad you went.
And it made me think of this topic because we talk about, certain, tender plants, your peppers, your tomatoes, they love being planted deep. That warm soil just encourages their roots to grow.
Yeah.
And I think some people may be confusing that technique with planting how we plant an ornamental.
Okay, well, let's set it right then, because that is the advice for a tomato,
Yeah.
right? And so what are the other plants that you do that for? Everything else, I assume, you plant high, right?
It's a very short list of things that you
Yeah,
get to
very
bury
short.
deep. Very short.
Like basil.
So assume not deep.
Assume, okay.
Assume not
Do
deep.
what Julie said, unless it's a tomato, and then you're good.
Yeah.
And what's nice too is if you're struggling with soil that is a little more difficult, tends to kind of hold water a bit, when you do plant it on a slight little mound up just a bit above the surrounding soil, it does kind of support drainage in a way where you're never going to see your irrigation or your rainwater just collecting and resting on that trunk like a bowl.
Right. And it's a great argument for drip while you're at it. So a lot of us do have a lot of clay, and for those of us that have clay, you are going to be seriously challenged to be successful with a sprinkler or with a hose, because clay is so tightly packed that it's hard to get the water in there. So you can stand there with a hose forever and then stick your finger in that dirt and find out you only watered a half an inch deep. But if you use drip, you can go down 1, 2, 3, 4 feet, as much as you need to do. And because the clay soil holds water so well, you also don't have to water very often. So if you found last year, let's talk about soil for a minute then, if you found in your veggie garden last year that you had to water every day because the soil was dry, you might have overcorrected and have soil that is too light and fluffy. It doesn't have the ability to hold water. And if you're going to amend, let's add some compost, something that's going to help that water stay in there longer so the plants can access it when they need it. So when you're planting regular plants outside, make sure you're using a lot of your native clay in there. It's necessary. It's got a lot of ability to hold water, and it's got a lot of nutrition and minerals in there that your plants need.
Great. Love it.
And I just also want to mention that, Julie, earlier you mentioned the handouts at the stores.
Right.
I don't know if everyone knows that those exist. It's a great resource. So
They're
if
fabulous.
you need help or diagram, a lot of people are visual learners. Check out these cool infographics and things. There's a handout for a lot of different stuff at all of the Green Acres stores. It might be towards the front where the cash registers are, where you enter, or ask one of the employees to help show you where they are.
Yes.
How to plant a tree, just all
huge.
the
Right.
basics.
Yeah, that stuff is great.
And they do a great job in the stores. You're not going to find things about planting in sub-zero temperatures this time of year. You're going to find what you need. You're going to find integrated pest management and troubleshooting for your veggies. You're going to find how to plant trees and shrubs. You're going to find how to transfer your watering system to drip, and it's all right there.
Yeah.
I had another question, Julie. You were talking about drip.
Yeah.
An argument for drip.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I came across one recently that I hadn't encountered before, which was that spray watering or hand watering has the potential to splash dirt on your plants and get more disease on it. Is that true?
Yeah, so the bacteria, the microbes, things that cause fire blight, things that cause peach leaf curl, all those things happen to be hanging out in the soil at one time or another. And if you're using sprinklers, you're splashing it up onto the plant where it's laying in wait for the perfect temperature. Oh. And then it shows up in the spring. And there's not much you can do about several of these diseases once they show up in the spring. So by concentrating on using drip, you avoid splashing. The other important thing about using drip, you avoid splashing, which means you avoid growing weeds.
That's one of my favorite parts about drip. You're putting water right where you want it, right where you need it. It's not getting just broadcast wholesale everywhere in your garden.
No, and that's just so important. So you're going to find a huge reduction in diseases, pests, and weeds when you stick to drip.
Less water waste, too.
Do you ever purposefully water a weed?
I'm sorry?
No? You guys don't ever do that?
Not purposely, but I've seen some nutsedge take advantage of some overwatering for sure. Now can we set our sights a little bit on some edibles?
Yes.
On some. First, I want to talk about a little bit edible ornamentals.
Okay.
One, namely, being blueberry plants.
Yeah.
And how important this might kind of comes into connection with soil pH.
Yes.
So we love blueberries. Actually, I was going to bring you guys some. The garden at the school.
Dang.
They're looking.
Really?
Why are you
like
teasing
starting
us?
after a good meal, they're looking plump and juicy.
I don't know why you mentioned it.
And they're
It's just
delicious.
rude.
He's teasing us.
I wasn't
Rude.
sure if one was. I'm like, yeah, this looks pretty close to ripe. I just kind of touched it. Just put my hand near it, and the blueberry jumped off the plant into my hand, and then leapt from the hand into
Austin,
my mouth.
he's still talking.
I don't know why.
So good.
It's cool.
Well, I owe ya.
I have them at my community garden too. There's a community area that's for everyone to enjoy. That's like I don't know, like 20 different blueberry plants.
Oh, that's
Wow.
pretty good.
And they're all different kinds. So I'm just kind of picking at random. They're starting to all
Yeah.
pop, right? And they're amazing. You're right.
Oh, like candy. So
Nothing
good.
like it. Nothing
Now,
like it.
so I've seen some people have issues with growing their blueberry plants where they look a
Okay.
little rangy, a little, a little thin, and then their leaves tend to be a little yellow.
Okay.
What's going on there? I think I kind of broke it, but what's happening there, and how do we correct that?
So a couple of things are happening there. If your plant is growing kind of tall and rangy, it's possible you don't have the right amount of light.
I'm sorry, rangy?
So kind of
Leggy?
tall, leggy.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
leggy's the right word.
There
If
we
it's
go.
looking kind of leggy and the leaves are a little bit small, it's possible that it's doing its best to reach for enough light. And blueberries are tricky because we all know that they don't want gobs of light, but they still have to have enough. So
Yeah.
if you have your pot of blueberries underneath a tree and they're only getting filtered light for 2 hours, you're going to have funny looking blueberry plants. If the leaves are starting to turn yellow, or if the leaves are starting to turn brown on the edges, or you can see that the veins of the leaves are green, but the rest of the leaf is kind of yellow,
Yeah.
these point to issues with pH.
All of those.
All of those
Okay.
things. So we automatically assume that there's some kind of deficiency or toxicity, or we assume that there's too much or not enough water, too much or not enough food. But there's something called a pH test. And what that does is tell you where on the range of possibilities your soil is. And if your soil is not exactly where it needs to be, excuse me, your plants will start to show signs. They'll look a little bit brown. They'll look a little bit yellow. They'll look like they're reaching for the light. They'll just look kind of sad. And if you don't check the pH before you throw in iron, before you throw in sulfur, before you throw in more food, you might be making things worse.
Yeah, we
You've
know
got to.
blueberries really need their acidity, low pH.
So what pH is really a keeper, a guard, and it prevents the plant from taking up what is already in the soil. So you could have enough manganese or magnesium or iron, but the plant can't access it. So if you just start adding, you might be wasting money and you might be making things worse. But if you get that pH test and you find out that the proper range for blueberries is what, 5.9 to...
Yeah, it's like mid fives or something. It's pretty low.
So if you find that you're at 6.5 and you need to change that, now you know what to do. So always find out what's wrong with your soil before you make any changes.
Yeah, and luckily they have mixes now just for fertilizer mixes, just for blueberries and things like that that will help acidify the soil. I know there's organic amendments that you can use as well
Yep.
to lower that pH. You can give your blueberries beautiful, wonderful soil just like you would your tomatoes, but they're not going to appreciate it. They
Right.
really need that acidic nature in that soil, really low pH, just like camellias, rhododendrons, azaleas.
And lean soil too, right? Not really thick, heavy, lovely stuff.
Yeah, they like that well drained for
Yeah.
sure.
And then I assume too, if you planted and you did it all right,
Yep.
and your pH was good,
Yep.
After a few years, it's gonna track away from that, right?
Very
and
good.
you will have to amend no matter what.
Maybe. You just need to
maybe.
do that test. You need
Okay.
to do that test and find out.
Find out for real.
So,
Sure.
like up in the hills, people often worry that they have a lot of pine needles falling and that they must be changing the pH of the soil. Maybe it's been that way for millennia, but if you bring pine needles down here, you're probably not changing anything real too soon.
I've heard that about
So-
leaf litter too. Like certain like we say leave the leaves a lot, but sometimes the leaves, I've heard that said that they leave like tannins.
Tannins, they'll break down, release what carbonic acid, things like that.
Are we talking about the thing that they release to suppress weeds and competitor plants?
Oh, what is that?
Oh, that's something else, though.
Allelopathy or whatever.
Right. So sometimes this happens on purpose. The plant is protecting itself from competition
Interesting.
by dropping this stuff.
That's like eucalyptus trees.
They do that.
Yeah. Very cool. So pH matters,
It
especially
matters
for your blueberries.
deeply. And a lot of the problems with pH that appear on your plants, whether it's tomatoes or anything, you could easily think that it was abiotic. In other words, that the wind was too high or it was too hot or you didn't water enough. And it's pH. So pH problems mimic every other problem that's out there.
Tricky.
Yep. So get that settled first. Good to know. I love it. This is fantastic. Now we got to talk a little bit about the royalty of the garden, the tomatoes. We want to make sure
Yes.
everybody listening can have that confidence to have just a ripping tomato garden. you work at Our Water, Our World.
Yeah.
You deal a lot with organics and how to bring beneficial organisms into the garden, but also just how to utilize water.
Yeah.
So what is the best way to water our tomato plants in a way that's going to hopefully utilize the water, but also result in just a bumper crop of tomatoes?
Okay. The way I look at it is if I brought home a child or a puppy, I'm going to feed them a certain amount, but I cannot keep up with that same amount when my child is 6 months old, when my child is 1 year old. I can't. That child is going to suffer. So when you bring home a tomato plant, that cute little 4-inch guy, you're going to grow that 4-inch root zone into something that's 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. And that means updating how you water and how you feed as the plant grows. So you're going to first water so that you water all the way down to that little root zone that you brought home. But as the tomato gets fatter, right, he gets out there, you're going to move your drip emitters out to the furthest reaches of that tomato. If you keep it near the trunk, the plant can't access the water you put out there. Thirsty, hungry mouths on plants are always at that drip edge. So you're going to move those emitters out to that new drip edge and add more. And when it's that 4-inch cutie, you have to water pretty often because if it gets dry, it dies. Mm-hmm. Which means I need you to water a few minutes longer, then a few minutes longer, then a few minutes longer, so that you encourage those roots to grow deeper and deeper as time goes by and wider as time goes by. If you start your veggie garden at 5 minutes 5 times a day, you're going to end up with a root zone that's 4 inches deep and 2 inches wide. We've got to keep expanding and giving more and more. And the other key is less and less often.
Yeah.
So if I'm watering, I'm up to 25 minutes at the end of June, I'm not going to water again until I stick my finger in that soil and it got good and dry a couple of inches. If the soil is constantly wet all the way down, that's when the leaves turn yellow because it's drowning. That water fills in all the air spaces, and that's the same as drowning, so it'll turn yellow. So make sure that you're constantly updating that irrigation out to the furthest reaches, and periodically you keep adding minutes to your run time to grow those roots nice and deep.
That's great advice because I think when they're young, we're kind of not forced, but we're encouraged to kind of water them a little more frequently to get them rooted in, get them started. They're so small, the root system's so tiny.
Yeah.
You know, when you get that first wave of heat that we had like a week or two ago, you're like, oh my gosh, my babies.
Yep.
But you kind of have to fight that, and then, like you said, expand it longer, deeper, and then eventually more infrequent. We've had guests on here, and maybe you could attest to this, that not that the overwatering doesn't just affect maybe the cupping of the leaves and the yellowing, things like that, but it also can result in just plants that are kind of more leafy, more bushy, and have less flowers, or has finished fruit, tomatoes, that is a bit mushy, a bit mealy. And we don't want that.
Yeah, watered down and mealy, and it's just so disappointing. One of the things, so let's go back to, people that are nervous. Suppose you get a mealy, mushy cherry tomato. Do I recommend that you rip the plant out? No. One thing tomato plants love to do, especially if you buy the indeterminate kind, the ones that keep producing for months and months, is you're going to get a new crop of tomatoes on there and they're going to be fine because you changed how you watered. Yeah. And you're not going to have that problem.
Yeah, we hear people often say, let them struggle a little bit towards this end of the season as they're starting to really ripen up and develop that fruit. Make them kind of work for that water a little bit.
And that's how we view it. We view it as making them struggle. That we're stressing them out. And we aren't. We're watering as deeply as we're supposed to, and we're letting it breathe in between. That's a success story, but we can't get it out of our heads that sounds like stress and it sounds like mean.
Because us, we're like, I like to keep eating and I want to keep having fun. It's like, no, you also need rest. So I guess that's equivalent to their rest. They're getting a little bit of rest in between those deep soakings.
Yes.
Now, how often are we encouraged to feed these plants? I know tomatoes, a lot of our squash, zucchini. I'm going to be growing cantaloupe this year, 3 types of cantaloupe. Maybe I'll bring that in. And we're going to grow them all vertical. I got the netting and the poles. It's going to be awesome. I did it a little bit last year. Worked really well. And we're going to kind of...
did he just say maybe he'd bring us some melon?
I think he did.
I will. Okay, I will. I will certainly bring some in. But how often... they're heavy feeders. All these fruit... they're really rich with nutrition. So obviously, how often should I be fertilizing the garden?
In general, when you're using an organic fertilizer in a solid form, they're talking about every 4, 5, or 6 weeks. And remembering that food gets put at the furthest reaches of those branches. And when you use organic and you look at the instructions, it's really clear that it has to go in the soil. It cannot be just drizzled on top like icing on a donut or something. You got to get it in there. And because it's this biological reaction that's going on, the food becomes available and the plant is able to access it. So why would I choose every 4 weeks and why would I choose every 6? It has to do with how fast your plant's growing. So if it's putting on massive amounts of growth, it might be using more, and you can go down to once a month, every 4 weeks. But if it's a slow time, say it's in the spring and it really hasn't hit its stride of being 89 degrees all the time, the plant probably isn't growing a whole lot, and what you gave it is fine.
Okay, so I want to get very detailed on this,
Okay.
Julie. I've got about 8 tomatoes in the ground.
Wow.
At the community garden.
Pretty good.
Plus other vegetables as well, peppers
Okay.
and some good stuff, some squash. And I've got tomato vegetable food, solid form from E.B. Stone, bag of it. And you're saying I need to get it in the soil. So
Right.
I need to pull back my mulch.
Oh, good question.
Right,
I
and
see where
then-
you're going.
Yeah, you got straw mulch, right?
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
straw mulch. But how do I?
Yeah.
How you said it really has to get down there? How do I do that?
So without disturbing
messing up
all
the
the root
roots.
zones and
Yeah.
stuff. So what I recommend is you're going to take your finger, make a little hole, put some in.
Oh, really?
Go
I don't
12
need like
inches
a wide
around?
coverage.
No, if you go every 12 inches around that perimeter, it's considered ideal. The same
Okay.
with water, every 12 inches around that perimeter. So if you're using a drip system, maybe put it right near where the dripper's going to be. Then
And
you
the
know
water
it's every
can pull
12
it down a little.
and make it available.
Okay.
So no, that's a really good question
Well, how
because
deep
it
is
sounds like
how deep is my hole?
so the bag I think says 3 to 4 inches is how
Okay.
deep it's supposed
That's
to go,
not too
but we
bad.
got to check. We got to check.
Okay.
If you even just tickled it in at the very
Yes.
least, so that way it's actually mixed into the soil, like you don't have to dig deep and
Right.
disturb the roots. But if you just got it to where it's not at the surface, but it actually is incorporated, that's a start too, because then it
Okay.
can at least be exposed to moisture and then start slowly dissolving, like until it
Especially
be
because
available.
you've got the mulch on top, so it's going to be covered. It's not going to flow away. It's not going to, water away, and you've got it in that soil. So he's absolutely right. Even just tickle it in. Sometimes what you can do is take your finger or a screwdriver or something and just make a dent in your mulch. Sprinkle the stuff down and then put everything back.
This is the first time I'm actually using tomato vegetable fertilizer. In the past, I was like, this, because it was always in containers. So
Okay.
it was like, this is full of good stuff that's not
Yeah.
done
especially in containers.
yet. But I think in containers, you are draining the nutrients out even faster.
They can drain out, but also they're just limited.
Right, they
some of those
need it.
plants, like Julie mentioned, their roots by the end of the season can get pretty long on a tomato. So if
Yeah.
it's only if it's limited in a container, you definitely have to keep them fed.
Well, if you don't mind, let's dive into containers.
Good. That's where we should go.
That's something our listener was asking about. They were asking about container gardening vegetables.
Yeah.
And which containers to use. So maybe let's start with that. I recommended that they try the fabric pots, the smart pots. But my opinion is actually that you could use basically anything as long as it's deep enough. I think the key is to have very deep potential and filled as much as you can with good soil. I see a lot of people with a lot of emptiness in
Yeah.
the container.
Right.
And then the sun exposure is getting messed up and just the lack of potential for the roots. So,
Right.
Julie, where does your mind go with that?
I am not as picky about the container itself. I think the depth is really critical. I've seen people, though, grow tomatoes in pots that I considered almost criminally small, and my heart hurt a little. And they've been successful. Tomatoes apparently can be really forgiving.
As long as you don't let it dry out, right?
Too much.
And if you're
it
fertilizing.
has to dry out, right?
Okay.
So remember that top from the surface, I need an inch or two of dry soil. But if you let it get too dry in between, that can be a problem. Pots require a different set of understanding. That is its whole world. It can't pull water from the
it's
surrounding soil.
isolated.
Yep. It can't pull nutrition from the surrounding soil. It probably doesn't even have the benefit of insects in there that are aerating and bringing in nutrition from other parts of the yard. So this is something that you have to take a little more care of. And that's why you have to stick to organic fertilizers. If you use a synthetic, it's too much food, too fast, and it can't be flushed out. You're stuck with it. And how you water, it's really tempting to think that you can take a hose to that thing, but if you use a hose, you're going to be pounding that soil down. It's going to compact, and now you're going to have yellow leaves because there's not enough air. And you've lost all that light, fluffy soil where all the roots were going to spread to. So drip is still excellent for pots. One thing I've noticed with pots is that the soil can give out on you in one certain way. When the pot gets hot, the soil will wick away, pull away from the edge of the pot on the inside of the pot. And when you use a hose especially, you'll find that water came out the bottom and you think, I did it. But it just snuck down around the sides and out. If you stick to drip, that won't happen. Drip, the water is low and slow. If you find out that you've been watering with a hose or with drip, every now and again you need to stick your finger in that dirt and make sure it took the water. Sometimes it can get so dry that it won't accept water anymore.
Hydrophobic.
There it is.
I'm afraid of water. Take it easy there, soil. It's okay.
So you know how with your veggie garden, we're always asking you to top dress, put out a little bit of compost here and there to keep your soil safe, feed your soil at a gentle rate. Do that in your potted veggies too.
Okay.
Because that soil, it's going to get beat by the sun. It's going to get beat by your hose.
Let me ask you this. One dead giveaway that a plant is thirsty for some water is its leaves wilt a bit, right?
All
They
right,
kind of
Kevin.
droop. They get
Kevin.
very sad looking. It's obvious. Can I just, I'm curious,
Yeah.
if I just waited for that to happen and then watered, am I doing damage?
Yes.
I am. So it's not the way.
Absolutely.
Don't let that
stressing.
happen.
Yeah.
Don't
Never
let that
do
happen.
that. First of all, plants do wilt. You'll come home from work, it's 4 or 5 o'clock, and the plants are looking kind of wilty.
Right.
But if you go out there and stick your finger in that dirt, and if it's wet, it's not a lack of moisture. And if you just add water when it's not dry, you've compounded the problem.
Okay, well, I'm assuming it is because of a lack of water.
So we have to find out. The only way you're going to be sure is a moisture meter or
Okay.
your finger. Because if you overwater, you stressed the plant out some more. But update your irrigation. Know if you need to have 3 emitters in there or 4 emitters, depending on the size of
Yeah.
this thing. And
Yeah, we hit that hot week recently, and some of my babies, the bell peppers, they weren't quite big enough yet, and
Yeah.
I think 2 actually failed.
Okay.
But I'm okay with that because I've got enough going on. I'm just gonna edit in something else.
Very good.
And move on and note that
Yeah.
I didn't water frequently enough for that hotness. That was just a teaser of how hot it's gonna get.
right, but the babies just couldn't take it.
Yeah, they weren't ready.
They
for
just
it.
couldn't take it because their root zone was still super tiny.
Right.
So they couldn't cope.
And to your point, Austin, if you have a plant that does show signs of stress from being a little dried out or a little thirsty, you can definitely salvage it and save it. Doesn't mean it's lost, but it's probably not the
Right.
best measuring stick for when to water.
Okay,
but definitely, but if you see it, it definitely might be time to water.
Right.
But
Yep.
like Julie said, go out there and check for sure.
You've just
Okay.
got to check. That's all there is to it.
Awesome. How do we control weeds while we're also trying to grow
I know.
plants in the same place?
Okay,
I know,
call on
I
Julie.
know, I
Call
know.
on Julie.
Okay, right there in the front, the sweetheart in the front row.
Drip. Drip will help you control weeds. Sprinklers spray water everywhere, which means you have weeds everywhere. So stick to drip. Second, mulch. Remembering that the definition of mulch is anything you put on top of the soil to stop the sun from hitting the soil. So it could be straw. It could be wood chips, right? There's a whole multitude of things out there that are going to work.
And there's some bagged soils that I think kind of can act as a mulch in our vegetable gardens, where it's kind of smaller, broken up pieces. Nice little top dressing. Not necessarily a pure planting mix, but I've seen
Right.
different bags where it's shredded and it kind of has that mulchy kind of quality.
Yeah, and you'll see it. It'll call itself mini mulch or something. And don't forget about vermicompost. This might be the best mulch you can have out there in the veggie garden. And knowing that mulch is traditionally put down 2 or 3 inches deep, remember the cardinal rule about mulch is you do not let it touch your plants. It cannot touch the stem of your plants because you're changing the soil line and you're going to induce rot.
I thought about that earlier when you were bringing up, planting too deep and that being an issue. And I was like, kind of the same thing happens with mulch.
Yes.
If you have mulch piled up, like even a nice healthy tree that's
Right.
got a good caliper trunk on it, if you start piling the wood chips and the mulch against it, it's also not going to enjoy that. It's going to
No, that's when you see the
it.
fungus and the mushrooms and things growing out of it. So never let mulch or plant litter touch the base of your plants.
Copy that. I will follow your cardinal rules, Julie. I will be good.
And we usually default to 3 to 4 inches of mulch is like ideal.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the other day, I'm like, well, why not 5? Why not 6 or 7?
Excellent question.
Okay, why not?
Too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
If it gets wet and it's fine material, in other words, it fits together really well, the deeper it is, the wetter it is, the more you risk compacting your soil. So it can be too much of a good thing.
Yeah, I've read as well that maybe you can attest to this, that the oxygen exchange, if it starts getting too thick, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches, you might be slowing the weeds down a little bit better.
You could be slowing everything.
But also
Wow.
the exchange of air, oxygen from the atmosphere into the soil is kind of
Smother
limited.
it out.
I'm willing to
Wow.
look into that. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, this has been a fantastic conversation. For anybody who's listening who's still on the edge or wants to
Yeah.
maybe get their hands on some more information or has more questions, what should they do?
There are so many ways for you to get some answers because even though we had a great talk today, tomorrow you'll have another question and the next week you'll have another
yeah.
question, right? All right. Never panic. There's always somebody to ask. There's always information out there and solid information. So when you go to the Green Acres homepage, what are they going to see on there?
On there, so we have this service called Garden Solutions.
Yes.
And on the website, on the homepage, it says Ask a Garden Expert. If you click that, you can email a question. You can provide photo. That's always the best, right? Send in
A
some
picture.
photos.
If you're seeing a bug, if you're seeing some crack on your leaves, send a picture of those things. And then our team of experts is going to look into it and give you the best advice. Another possibility is in every county in this state, you have the University of California Master Gardeners. So if you're not in our area, but you want to ask a question about Butte County or LA County, whatever it is, you find out. And you can do the same thing. You attach a picture, you can describe, you can make any of your questions, and they will have their whole team looking at it and getting an answer for you.
And what's really cool about that is the master gardeners for each county,
Yeah.
their whole approach to gardening is based on that county's climate, the weather,
Yes.
the plants people are growing, their soil. So it's very you can get very specific advice that is geared to just your area, which is fantastic.
Right,
'Cause
because
for
once you
me-
start Googling things, it's a mess.
It's a mess. And
Yeah.
you can find out, so what if Aunt Gladys has fabulous tomatoes in Iowa? That's not going to help you here in Sacramento.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel like a failure, and maybe she withheld the recipe or something.
Oh, we don't
You
want
know?
that.
And if all else fails you, you can, of course, contact me in Austin at the Green Acres,
Yes.
the Facebook group on the Green Acres Garden Podcast. We'd be happy to answer
Excellent
questions there.
idea.
There's a lot of other gardeners that I know are in the thread, some master gardeners specifically as well, who are happy to share their knowledge, their experience. We'll do what we can to also contribute. And I think that's a great way, and it's super easy to upload photos, videos
Yeah.
there of your garden, your issues, and you can just show things off. If you just want, if you don't
Yeah.
have a problem, just show stuff off. But if you've got questions,
like that.
Don't keep your questions to yourself.
No.
Other people also have those questions, and other people have also overcome whatever you're dealing with in your garden. So whatever issue it is that you think you have, other people have already dealt with it.
Right.
And
There's no
there
need.
is a
Yep.
solution.
There's no need to rip that tomato plant out in shame. Let's ask the question, and then we'll decide what to do.
Yep.
There
let's
we
do
go.
it.
You've got questions. Julie Barbour's got the answers.
Julie, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great to have you back in the old studio
Yeah.
and reunite. This is like a good. I like doing this because you know your stuff, and
thank
you make me feel okay about it. Like
Yeah,
if I've made a
okay.
mistake or you have a very positive, loving, caring, nurturing nature to you, you're just the right person to be given the garden advice. So
I don't
Thank you.
get it, Austin. She seems devilish to me.
You do call her the barbarian.
No, I'm just teasing.
yeah.
Well, we love you, Julie. Thank you so much for coming back and schooling us up.
Loved it.
Do you want to shout out Our Water, Our World? What's going on?
Our Water, Our World. Check them out online. All kinds of solutions for your pests, weeds, diseases, and it's all using University of California information, all with the goal of keeping pesticides out of the water.
Let's
Love
do
it.
that.
That's awesome. So I hope you all are having a great time out in your own gardens. If you haven't planted anything yet, get out there and plant. There's no
do it.
excuse. This
Yeah.
is
Let's go.
The time is now. So
Yep.
happy gardening to you all. And please
Never stop growing.